let's skip forward for a second. Something interesting in our world today, I've talked about it even just the other day. We have World Heritage sites all over the planet, for humanity. We have to preserve these things. UN World Heritage sites for generations to come. We got to save them all. So one site that's a World Heritage site is uniquely at the highest altitude of all World Heritage sites. And there was a couple other ones. There was one in Switzerland they wanted to do, and it was higher than this one. And they said, no, we won't do it because it's too high of an altitude. You can do it at the base of the mountain, not at the top. At the top of Mount Hermon, there's a World Heritage site, about a little under 6,000 feet. What does it commemorate? The whole world must honor this thing. It's so important to the world. It's so important. It's the highest altitude World Heritage site. What happened? At the top of Mount Hermon, the legend is that 200 aliens to Earth landed and then came down from the top of the mountain. Landed from where? I saw you fall like lightning from heaven. Landed at the top of Mount Hermon, went down to the base of Mount Hermon, and there they built a city. Mount Hermon's on the border between Israel and Syria. Okay? At the base of Mount Hermon, they built a city. You know what the city's name is? Baal. It's the city of Baal. And those that occupied the city were of stature, and their children were men of stature. They were very smart, and they were very tall. Okay? And at a certain point in their legends, this isn't, this is other people's stuff. In their legends, we're reading their mail. So there's variations on this. So if you say it's just exactly this way. Well, in the Catholic Church, they teach it this way, and the Protestant, they teach it this way, and over this other one, they teach it this other way, okay? And it's like some of the semantics on the physics. We get to different groups, and what I like to refer to as a torsion effect, other people have different terms for it. It's the same effect, it's just a different name. A rose by any other name is still a rose. Whatever language it is, the rose didn't change. How you're referring to that rose may change. So these 200 were all male in their legend and preferred the company of each other, so it would appear maybe gay. But they knew that they were going to die without any offspring because of whatever. So they made a pact, according to their legend. They made a pact, and the leader of their group said, we must essentially procreate with the humans. Some of the legends say it was with other animals also. So they may very well have had technology to allow them to do gene splicing and things like that, other things. But apparently they could have sex with, they chose for themselves of the women whoever they wished, and nobody could resist, okay? And had offspring. And the offspring were men of stature that were, giants. And they were men of renown. They had intellect. They were, in a very whatever society. The city of Baal at the base of Mount Hermon had gateways or doorways you could come through, and they were archways. And so we know that because one of them was preserved. Baal was destroyed by the humans at some point in time. And one of the archways was kept all down through the centuries until just a few years ago, when ISIS blew it up. But before ISIS blew up that doorway, it had been perfectly photographed and preserved, very high resolution photography in every angle, so it could be duplicated. And that archway, multiple archways now go on tour around the world. So we know kind of what the city was like. We know the layout, and it was a city that practiced child sacrifice. Okay. Now, we see in the scriptures in the Bible that the people coming into the promised land when they left Egypt, they were, told not to make their children to pass through the fire. That's a very church pulpit Sunday way of saying, don't roast your kids alive as a sacrifice. Like, I want that. Okay. I don't want those kind of sacrifices. God doesn't want that. But the practice was in place. So he had to specifically tell them, don't offer your kids as sacrifices. And specifically there in Baal, what were they practicing? Child sacrifice. If you brought a child to these aliens, they could sacrifice it. And by the way, within the scriptures, what do they do with the meat from the sacrifices brought to the temple for offerings? They eat it. The priests eat it. So it's a reasonable thing to assume, and there is writings that back this up, that apparently after the children were brought for a sacrifice, these Baal priests would eat the children. Now, jump forward into a different location in Israel. What was the whole thing on top of the hill about with Elijah? Elijah went up there, had this thing challenging the priests of Baal. And he said, if God's with you guys and you're supposed to be doing these sacrifices, because they're in the middle, by the way, he proclaimed a drought because the people were so far out of whack with God. And the drought came on there, and it's 3-year drought. They're out of water. Everything's just horrible. So they want him to stop the drought. They recognized that he had spiritual power. Way with God, he could get something done when he asked God to do something. He asked for a drought and got it. Now they want him to ask God not to have the drought. And so he challenges the priests of Baal. And he says, on their turf, they always like to be on the tops of the mountains. Frequency, there's some stuff there, but it's also because they were cast down out of heaven. Why do they want to be in the high places? When you go to cities and you look for demonic architecture of things that are going on, the demons like the highest place in the city. Okay. We battle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers of darkness in high places. And there's physically high, which they like, but there's also politically high. There's also business high, science high. There's different states that they want to be in. So then, in this challenge, the priests of Baal build an altar, and they're going to just ask God to bring down lightning, take the sacrifice, and show that God likes them. And Elijah's going to do the same thing and see if he can get God to take his sacrifice. But it was on the top of the mountain. It was at the power point of the energy grid, if you will, for the demonic, where these guys had carefully put their altar at the top of the hill, and they're having people bring their children and sacrifice them to Baal, Moloch. In Israel? Yeah, they're totally mentally captured. Can you imagine how baked and twisted you would have to be as a society to allow that to happen? And then in a highly visible place where everybody can see what's going on. You can see the fire burning. Everybody in the town knows it. Well, I wouldn't take my kid up there. Well, you wouldn't get favor. You wouldn't necessarily get protection. And it's still a resonance coming from whatever was going on at Baal before the city of Baal was destroyed. Somebody else figured it out and destroyed it. But the practice is still going on there in the land. This is still in the same region. And so They go up on top of the thing. They're cutting themselves. They're making all the noise, the chants, the it's insane. It's like a rock concert on steroids, right? And the screaming and everything else. And Elijah's laughing at them. Scream louder, cut louder. Is your God taking a potty break? Is he up yet? Where is he? I don't see him. Come on, let's go. God, it's getting late. Wait already. Finally, he's ready to go. He says, okay, let me do this. No. You can't go do your thing yet. You've probably got pyrotechnics hidden in your altar here. We're sure of that. You've done it because you're going to try and fool us that God actually is going to support you. Oh, so you think I had pyrotechnics? What do you think they had in their fire? Now, why were they so upset? Their fire hadn't gone off. Their pyrotechnics weren't working. I guarantee you they had a no failure policy on this. And so, I said, all right, let's go ahead and put some water on it. Water on it is a very precious commodity. They're in the middle of a drought. People are practically dying from the drought. So water's a big deal. They grab water, they douse the fire. Oh, is it, wet enough? Yeah, you sure? It does it 3 times. And they're at the top of the hill. Where's the water come from? Who go gets it? The priest of Baal. Okay, here's some more. Can you imagine? Because they want to be thorough. It's good water. I have a sip before I finally throw it on the thing. When Elijah prays, the whole thing is consumed literally with like a nuclear blast. People have looked at the rocks up there, say that the temperature has to have been almost nuclear somehow, for where they think it was. God takes the sacrifice and then they turn. Think of all the people who had sacrificed their own children. They were all up there, the priests of Baal who had received their children with great ceremony, formality, with all the sounds just right, the wailing, so you couldn't hear the children. And they give it to the priest. They take it over and they would put it in these great brass arms of this Moloch Baal idol. And it had doors on the stomach that would open out, and the arms were on wires or cables. They'd place the child in these red hot arms, and then it would roll into the belly of this Baal idol Moloch, shaped like a bull, red hot. And then they would close the doors. You would hear the child for a very brief period screaming, bodies to different things and fires. It's a horrid thing. But then realize also when it was done, if they were practicing the way that the Israelites were doing with the temple and all that, with their sacrifices, the priests were eating the bodies of these children after they were sacrificed. That was the practice. So when we think about this, the people saw this great spectacle. Unbelievable. I mean, imagine the pageantry, the drama, everybody going up, okay, this is the big day. He makes this challenge. It's all about ending the drought. Everybody shows up. Everybody is there. Good, bad, whatever side you're on, indifferent, I don't know, but it's going to be wild. Was there anything else to do that day in Jerusalem? No, everybody shows up. And when the lightning bolt comes down and takes Elijah's offering, what was the shock in the minds of those people? Oh my God. I believed these guys. I thought I was getting favor with God. I was doing what God wanted. I was giving their own children for a sacrifice. They were so upset that they turned on the priests of Baal and killed every one of them. Now, they walked over and killed. No. There was a fight like you can't believe, I'm sure. And they turned on every one of them, chased them down the hill, makeup running, staff falling away, whatever, because they had all the ornaments on them, because they're very priestly. They're very, priests of Baal, they walk around town like they own the place, which they did. That's why Elijah challenged them. And they killed everyone. And then a little later, after Elijah had a little moment and all that, the king went ahead and did a special little thing and killed off the rest of the priests of Baal too, in a very big, dramatic moment that, Jerry probably tell you about this next show. But the reason I mentioned that, it was so dramatic that the whole country, that whole part of the world, completely flipped on the priests of Baal, hunted them down, destroyed them all. They wouldn't have them in the land anymore. We're at that kind of a moment for us as a society. And one of the things that I wanted to stop and slow down, that's unique because you gave me the opportunity to bring this up, Tika. Imagine those priests of Baal. What were they like? What was our enemy like? Somehow you had a group of people came into the land. They displaced the previous people there who were doing child sacrifice also. They were the descendants of these giants, men of renown. So the whole land was corrupt. Pause for a second. Go back in time 500-600 years. What's the whole point of why the children of Israel, whose name was Jacob and God's name changed to Israel, third generation from Abraham, they went into the promised land and they displaced and killed all the monsters that were there, who were what? Giants. Because when the spies went in, I have a certain understanding, affinity for the spies. I want to be on the good side of the spies, not the bad guy side. But they went into the land, and 12 of them went in, 10 of them came out. They all said, hey, it's a great place. It's the land of milk and honey. It's very fruitful. It's beautiful. It's got all sorts of everything we need. But 10 of them said, a little problem here. Excuse me, hold on. I don't know that we want to go in there. Why? Because the problem is there's giants in the land, and we were but grasshoppers in their sight. Og, the giant, his bed was 30 feet long. That's his bed. Goliath was only somewhere around 12 feet by most accounts. So if you're talking, there was bigger ones than, and by the way, when David went down and got 5 round stones out of the brook Kidron, and then went to go into battle with Goliath, why'd he get 5 stones? Back up in case I miss. No. He got 5 stones because Goliath had 4 brothers. And when he killed Goliath, they were coming for him. They were not going to back down. And then the way they do it, they call cousins, by another brother. It looks like Goliath had one actual brother, and then there were descendants of that brother, and so they call them brothers still. But he went and killed all of them. He didn't just kill one. He went after the whole tribe. Okay? And so go back for a second, though. Wait a second. The whole story of the promised land, where we all want to go, by the way, in this world, the story is that Abram, he lived in an area of the world that was very much into soothsaying, and they had every kind of divination that they practiced, and that people was very famous for that, and they could tell the future and all sorts of things. In fact, when Joseph was a slave in Egypt, generations later, Joseph, a descendant of the great grandson of Abraham, Jacob, Joseph went into Egypt. He was a slave, and then he got favor, and he became the guy that set everything up for the famine, and then how we're going to run the country. When the family showed up, and they didn't realize it was him, he set them up by putting a cup of divination that belonged to him, which they must have seen somewhere, into Benjamin's backpack. Okay, so it was a cup of divination. What would have been the significance of that? Why would Joseph have gotten that? Because they knew that he was a descendant of the people that came from this area that could tell the future. He could read a dream. He could tell the whole thing. So he's helping get the illusion going for everybody to understand his cup of divination. So they're all very into the spiritual everything. Okay. So Abraham leaves this area of people looking into the future and all sorts of stuff. He doesn't have any children. He's had a dream. God told him that I'm going to give you children and you're going to be as the sand of the seashore and the stars in the heaven for number. He believes the dream. That's why he's called the father of the faithful. He gets all of his servants, all of his cattle and sheep and, the Ferrari, everything, loads it up, and he takes off on a walkabout. And he goes and walks away from where he grew up with the Chaldeans, and he sojourns in the land. Everywhere, God told him, everywhere you plant the sole of your foot, I will give to you and your descendants as an inheritance forever. So Abraham walks around this region that we now call Israel, but it's really the greater Palestine area, all the way up into Syria, Lebanon, all these other places. Abraham is placing his feet in faith, in belief that God's going to give his descendants those places as a place to live. He doesn't even have a kid yet. That's why he's called the father of faithful. He believed that God could make something happen even as he's getting older and older. When Abraham sojourned in the land, now you didn't see this coming. Wake up. How many, this is a really tough question, Jerry. I hope you can get this answer right. I mean, you've been reading every day, you've got your scriptures, you get the Bible out. Look, how many times did Abraham encounter giants in the land when he was walking through the area that God was going to give him? This is 500-600 years before the people went in there and, the walls came down at Jericho and everything else. How many giants? 0. There's no account of him encountering giants in the promised land. How'd they get there? Where'd they come from? Why were they there? You're the devil. You think the devil didn't see what God was doing with Abraham? You think that he didn't see the promises that Abraham was acting on? Of course the devil knew what Abraham was doing. Of course the devil knew what God was promising him. He knew the thing all the way back to Adam. God promised Adam and his seed the earth and everything in it as an inheritance, the physical body and everything that creeps and crawls and moves upon the earth, to Adam and his seeds, his children, his great-grandchildren, his children a trillion generations away. The devil's still in the same fight. He's trying to corrupt the DNA with his own so that he can have a part in the blessing that was promised to Abraham, and God can't do it. That's why he had to kill Abel, go for Adam. The only way that we can produce this further is with Eve. And so Cain, the hybrid, would have to have sex with his mother. Now, as crazy as that sounds, do you know that the national city in America is built around that exact story and symbology? That's what the Washington Monument's all about. You're effed as a country. It's at the center of the city. It's the penis of Osiris in their stories. And what's the penis of Osiris all about? Osiris was a god. I'm going somewhere with this whole time. I'm trying to pull all these loose pieces together so you see the bigger picture when we come back to child trafficking. In the story, in the myth, there was a good brother and a bad brother, and they were both gods, godlike. Okay, think back to Mount Hermon, these gods that fell to earth. The good brother was, it's Osiris and Set. And I have so many things going through my mind. Sometimes I lose track. My wife tells me something, and 2 seconds later, I just told you that. I'm not. It's not Alzheimer's. It's because I have other things going on in my brain. Anyway, honest. So Set is the good brother and likes humans and takes care of them and does stuff and all this other stuff. Osiris is the most evil of the gods and does all sorts of horrors to humans. So the good brother, this is a flip. They like reversals. They like mirrors. They like things upside down, backwards. The good brother in this case, in this Cain-Abel inversion, kills the bad brother Osiris. And then because he's a god, he could come back. So what does he do? He chops his brother Osiris into 12 pieces or 14 pieces. And then to make sure they can't come together and he can be reborn somehow or come back together, he scatters the pieces across the whole earth. The problem is his mother, their mother, because they're twins. Twins. Cain and Abel. Twins. The mother, Isis, where have you heard that name? Finds out that Set has killed Osiris. Well, he's the most evil of all the gods. Maybe the mom would actually be glad. No, she goes out and she's upset and she gathers all the parts and pieces. But she can only find 13. The 14th is missing, which is the penis. Supposedly eaten by a fish. There's like 50 different variations of the story. So the mother, Isis, fashions a penis out of stone, a dildo, attaches it to his body. Then the mother, Eve, if the devil kills Adam, the mother has sex with the dead corpse of her son. These people are twisted, baked. It's evil. You can't make sense of it. The mother has sex with the son, with the penis, the stone that she's created, and supposedly becomes pregnant. By the way, in the satanic version of this, think about how the devil can see technology, see things growing out there. Imagine this. Is that the first explanation, the first description to a very technologically low thing, but they're putting something into history and time of artificial intelligence, silicon life form? You know what silicon material is made out of? It's made out of sand. You make glass out of sand, okay? The chips are made out of sand, silicon. That's why we talk about in the sci-fi movies. I have a huge collection. I love my sci-fi stuff. Silicon life forms and biological life forms. So here you have a picture of the merging of stone, silicon-based matter with DNA. It's very interesting. You think about if these people fell to Earth, what happened? There's a lot of stuff. One of the greatest science fiction writers that ever lived was also one of the most prolific biblical scholars that ever lived, and wrote, 180 books on the Bible and the Mideast and everything else. And it was his conclusion, and by the way, it's mine too, that we're living in a great big huge junkyard across our solar system. That there was humanoid life here in this part of our solar system. Not human because it wasn't descendants of Adam, but there was some kind of humanoid version, and in the course of some war, catastrophe, whatever, that's where these 200 came from. They fell to Earth. And by the way, if you don't think that the world leaders believe this, the people that are in power, this cult that's been running things. Let me give you a couple examples. 2012 Olympics. Queen Mother is at, the Windsor Castle, whatever. Daniel Craig playing James Bond, which is very occultish. Oh my gosh, if you knew all the story there. Two-ball cane, James Bond. That was the secret signature when he was communicating with the Queen. That was John Dee, who was a magician and a spy. So that's the original James Bond. Daniel Craig comes over to Windsor Castle, waits for the Queen, escorts her out to the royal helicopter. She gets in the helicopter. They fly off. They do a tour of all the statuary and symbology across London. They get to the great big huge Olympic Stadium. All the lights are turned down. The helicopter flies over, flashing green and red lights. It's hovering. They're waiting for it to descend and land in the middle of the stadium and the Queen to get out. That's not what happened! All of a sudden, she jumps from the helicopter with Daniel Craig accompanying her. She falls to earth, mimicking the people that she believes she's a descendant of. All of the royals believe that they're descendants of Cain. They're the Cains of the earth. And by the way, Brian mentioned David Icke. I talked to David before he even knew his name publicly, decades and decades ago. I think it might have even helped him start down this track. They laugh at us because we don't see. They're cloaked, they're camouflaged, like their father himself, Satan, Lucifer, the devil in the garden, where he hid amongst the green leaves of the garden. They're cloaked. The reptilians walking amongst us. They look human, but their DNA, as far as they're concerned, is shared, some tincture of it, with Cain himself, with their father, the devil. They believe that. Doesn't matter where you believe it. They believe it. So what happened to Satan, Lucifer, the devil after the beguilement in the garden? He was made to crawl amongst the dust of the earth. He was a reptilian and he was cursed, cold-blooded. Okay, so now you have the reptilians walking among us. The aliens, are they here yet? Are space aliens real? There you go. That's where they're getting a lot of this story. They're acting like, and by the way, there's stuff technology-wise like that. There's an interesting conversation there. So now let me start to bring this whole thing together for you. And I appreciate that you guys are very patient. You're a great crowd. And some of you have heard this before, but sometimes you got to hear it a couple times before it completely registers, okay? So now you have a group that have worked methodically over generations, over millennium, to get into positions of power. It's not different groups. They're the same families hidden. And they love the story of the phoenix, that about every 500 years takes and builds a pyre, a sacrificial altar, and then burns himself up in the sacrificial altar, completely consumed. Yet there's an egg that's left. And after the fire, born through the fire, the next phoenix arises. They love, if you look at their symbology, you think it's an eagle. It's not, it's a phoenix. Because they keep reinventing themselves. Same families, different name. You think it's a different group? No, Romans, Babylonians, the guys at Jericho, whatever. They still are the same crowd. They believe that they're descendants all the way back to Cain. And think about the mentality in that city in Baal. Why would you want child sacrifice? What if you're the devil himself and you're getting these people to have the bad karma, which God will curse? God curses this. He destroys it, right? You want them to do things that will bring God's destruction on them. So they bring the child, they give it to the priest, they have the bad karma, and they're killing their own children and destroying the pure DNA seed from Adam and helping the hybridized seed to fix what didn't get fixed when Cain killed Abel. He didn't get to Adam, and there was still other seed that was pure seed to Adam. Why the Jews? Horrible people from their history, even sacrificing children. They did all sorts of horrible things. Yet they had within the culture, and they're not unique in that, by the way, had within the culture to only marry within the family, the 12 tribes, to remain with the uniqueness between the tribes, right? As a direct descendant within those families, naming themselves all the way back to Jacob, God changed his name to Israel, Isaac before him, Abraham before him, and all the way back to Adam. What is something so unique and bizarre and wild that you think is just for their own history in the Bible? The genealogies. Because they're showing you that this person is a direct descendant of Adam. This person is a direct descendant of Noah. This person is a direct descendant to David. And while there may be intermarriages around them, the most likely group on planet Earth to still have a direct, pure blood, no hybridization descendant all the way back to Adam is within the Jewish families. So with that in mind, why would the devil want them uniquely targeted and destroyed? Because if he can kill all of humanity, what did the Church of Guidestones say? We only need 500 million people here on this planet. And at the time they were constructed, the number of people on the earth, what they were calling for is 500 million to survive. That just so happened to be 1/14 of the entire population of the world. 13 out of 14 people would have had to die. Okay, how many pieces of Osiris? See, if you remember when Hillary's stuff was released to WikiLeaks, and you saw that picture of her campaign manager, and he has 14 on his hand. Okay, they're all through it. In the Epstein releases that just happened, one of the unique things, he says, I'm more in service to the Rothschild family. And then you have the cousin that comes in and says they're Baal worshipers. Okay? That's what this is all about. I can go through 100 different things and show you these families, and that they are, in fact, they're Luciferian. Even within Albert Pike, Morals and Dogma, he says right in the middle of his book, which is the basis for Freemasonry, modern Freemasonry. Albert Pike wrote the book, Morals and Dogma. He says he wrote it in green ink because the spirit that revealed all of these truths to him was green. Okay? And so in honor of that, he wrote Morals and Dogma in green ink, where he hid amongst the green leaves of the garden. And then he says in the middle of the book, let there be no misunderstanding. The God whom we serve, and he's the one that gave out first time, New World Order. They're creating a new world order. That was what this book was all about. We need a new world order for the ages, for the whole planet. It'll take 3 wars. And the third one will be a religious war between the 3 Abrahamic religions. Get the brothers fighting. Okay? It's a religious war. He says, let there be no misunderstanding. The God whom we serve is Lucifer. What was the temptation to Eve? Knowledge. She could catch up with Adam. She could go past Adam God's afraid that you'll be as smart as he is because you'll know the difference between good and evil. She was baited in by knowledge because she was learning, but she had to go through a process to learn. She was going to get it all at once. Well, she got knowledge, okay. She got a baby. Then she taught Adam the trick. She got 2 babies. Got twins. Now you really got problems, okay? So that's this history leading to this moment in time. When we look at cultures where pedophilia is rampant, common, accepted, I think we have to think in terms that societally, many of these groups have intergenerationally been raised with certain ideas and beliefs that they then continue on. It seems relatively natural, and they want to be accepted even within their own groups for the stuff that they do, so they take it to different levels. And the pedophilia with children, the enslavement of children, the inculcation of getting them to think the same way, and then they pick and choose the ones that are the most adaptable, and the others are sacrificed. From a Baal position, the city of Baal, they wanted people that would give them favor to bring their children and give them, they're giants. They could do stuff with the farming, the building, the assemblage, all sorts of things. They have advanced knowledge. If they fell to Earth from space, they had advanced knowledge. In fact, part of the whole thing with the pyramids is that besides being power machines, actually, many of the structures were designed to preserve DNA. The whole embalming process wasn't to save the organs, the mind, the heart. That was all taken out of the body. They were preserved in a way that would preserve the DNA and the teeth. If you're an advanced space alien and you fell to Earth and you know where the technology will go, but you're on a planet where it isn't that advanced. And if you think of how a soul is brought into the body or out of the body, okay. Are you guys okay for another 5 minutes? Are going to go? Okay. You're very patient, and I know we have dinner coming like that. Oh, okay. Okay, I'll hurry. Boy, the pressure's on. I'm telling you, man. Okay. So do you live in this physical being, or is this just an avatar of your consciousness? Where is your consciousness actually at right this second? Is it in proximity to this? Is your physical body really just a receiver of a radio signal, a communication signal from somewhere else? And what would that signal look like? Kazarev found out that there was stuff that you couldn't find it with an electromagnetic detector, but it was still there. You could see it physically playing out in the physical world, but where was the energy coming from? So bear with me just a second. When eclipses happen, we can actually use what we have different devices, but I like torsion. It's the right word as far as I'm concerned, that can detect this other energy field. It's not electrical and it's not magnetic. It's not light. Where we can see it coming, we can get a magnetic detector, gauze detector out. We can't get the electrical thing out and find it. We don't see it there. It's invisible to us. And so yet when we use the right kind of a detector, when say Venus is coming up for an eclipse across the face of the sun, it's a little tiny planet, you got to get a telescope out to see it, and it goes across the face of the sun. When it first crosses where the two edges of the planet and the sun are about to cross is what we call a chime moment, like ringing a bell. And in this other technology, we can see, boom, there's a huge spike in the energy field within this subatomic field. Very real. This isn't voodoo. It's not spiritualism. It's a physical, real effect. It's just that most of the instruments that the scientists use are optical, electrical, or magnetic, and they don't detect this field. But when you use torsion as your detector, a torsion detector, boom, it's just right there. And it's at the instant the two begin to cross paths. It's a torsion effect. As Venus crosses into, all the way eclipsing the sun from our perspective, as the last little piece of the planet starts to cross the edge of the sun, boom! Another chime moment, bigger. Then it settles down and it's going through. Think of throwing a rock in a stream in a big splash, right? And that's kind of what's happened. It moves all the way across the sun. When it gets to the other side, there's another chime moment, boom! And you see the detector, oh my gosh, that thing's going off. And then as it gets to the other side, there's a smaller one, boom! And it clears and it's gone. Imagine this. Okay, here's where I'm going. Okay, you want frequency? Okay, all right, here we go. Space aliens, sci-fi. When you look at these occult groups, for example, up there in England, where they build caves, and the caves are designed so that every 20 years, when Venus crosses the sun, the light comes straight in the cave. 19.5 years, it comes straight in the cave. And it's so bright, even though it's dark outside in the pre-dawn, it's so precisely aligned. It's a polarized light coming in. It's like daylight inside a cave and you're 100 feet down the cave. Because it's perfectly aligned with Venus. We see other stuff with the pyramids perfectly aligned with other stars in a similar way. And it's just polarized light from that. And Venus is very bright in that specific situation. And why would that be important? Okay, here it comes. This is really big. Hollywood. Oh man, how does it go to there? Hollywood in the 1950s stopped everything. The studios wouldn't cooperate with each other with stars, because the studio would build up a star and they'd have them all in their films, and you knew when you went to one of the theaters with their film, you were going to see that group of stars. And so they would make very big things about each of their stars, almost competing studio to studio. Something wild happened. Three studios got together and allowed their best actors to be in a movie together. And the movie was all about a very specific thing, about space aliens, Forbidden Planet, with Robbie the Robot, which I love. Making alcohol for the cook. Robbie the Robot, yeah. So Forbidden Planet was a planet far, far away. And the scientist that was marooned there or left there with his, baby daughter or whatever, learning about that civilization that had been dead for eons. They had huge, massive computers. And when the race, according to the way the movie is written, the Krell, when the race was dying out, their technology, their understanding, think of it this way. What are our megalomaniacs, the Elons of the world, the Zuckerbergs, all the other ones, what are they trying to do? They're trying to figure out how to get immortality by downloading their consciousness into a machine. So God can't take them. They won't suffer eternal wrath. If they can download their consciousness into a machine, they bypass judgment. So what's going on? In Forbidden Planet, the race became so spectacularly advanced. And in the original, not just the movie, which kind of goes over a little bit, their consciousness is downloaded in the machine. I can tell you that Howard Hughes believed that, and by the way, it was Hughes Space Systems that sent all the drones to the moon before our astronauts landed, 30 of them, 36 was. Land on the moon, map the surface of the moon. It's very interesting stuff. It's all in the public. It's not, this isn't voodoo science. And he believed that the moon was full of technology, computers. What did it say in Forbidden Planet? Computers as far as the eye could see, 20 miles deep, still computers. All this complex technology to store the consciousness of an entire race of beings who are dying out, going beyond physicality. Would some advanced race use something as cumbersome and difficult to get enough power out of, that has all sorts of limitations as electrons to move power around to power the minds, their machines, these systems in a permanent situation? Or is there something beyond electromagnetic and light, the subatomic, okay? If you imagine a race that's 5,000 years advanced from us now, are they still transmitting power down a power line or even through a laser or whatever? Is there another technology that exists? Within Forbidden Planet, where creatures are created by just the guy's thoughts going through the machine and materializing, what they believe, and part of the reason for doing their stuff at portion moments, is that their understanding, going back to the people who were their ancient fathers, which were these Baal worshipers, the giants, the ones that fell to earth, they landed here in this kind of a scenario because of some cosmic cataclysm in space. 200 in their lifeboat fell to earth, landed on the earth, and then no technology. How good is your technology if you don't have other computers to communicate with? Your cell phone doesn't mean anything without a transmitter, without a tower, whatever. They were highly advanced technological and they lost all that. But they do know that there's a way that they could live, be born again in this world. What is it? Because if you don't actually live in the physical world, what if your consciousness is in like a safe or a vault, a location that's like the radio transmitter receiver at another spot, an avatar type scenario, and that it is tied very precisely to you and you only by your DNA. Your DNA is made up of crystalline material, and even the shape of it is shaped like, technically it works like a tuning fork. And so this tuning fork with 4 different materials and each side and a tail, like a tuning fork, and then done like a ladder, all these little tuning forks. Trillions of little tuning forks that are unique to every single person. I'm close to closing, but I want to get this out so that people will understand it and tie this all together. I had a person who, her thing of she was a spiritist type person that I came across. Somebody asked me to do something that was a very serious situation. And she needed a toothbrush, some hair, something with the DNA of the person that she was trying to find and find out what happened to them. And then she'd hold the hairbrush, the toothbrush, whatever had the DNA. And then she would receive and see in her mind, Dorothy Allison was her name, very famous, very, very famous. And she was no crackpot. I can tell you that the experiences I had with her were just unbelievable. Not that I had to agree with her, but it was incontestable that she was getting stuff. I would say that it was demonic, whatever, but at the end, I don't want to promote it. I'm just telling you it was a physical observation fact as far as I was concerned. What was she doing? If there's torsion, see, your heart actually puts out a torsion signal. We can read it too. Okay? We have torsion detectors can read that. She was putting it right here close to her heart, and she was amplifying it, making it resonate with her torsion signal. This other person's gone, but she's causing the DNA in there like a guitar string to resonate, and she could see what that person saw in their last moments in this world. And she would, and I can tell you, stunning. The last location on this particular thing that she had no knowledge of what I had done, what I had. No other person on planet Earth knew what I had. And she had several things that she said, it's this and this and this and this. This last thing on the list was a name, very unusual name. And we went out to this location, and I'd just been there the day before. There was nothing with that name on it. He says, no, it's like a neon light. It's so huge. You can't miss it. It's right there. The name of the killer is right there. Get out there, and overnight somebody put a campaign sign for a candidate up for office, all the bright colors and everything else. It's right on the front lawn at that location. It wasn't there 12 hours earlier. And it's one letter difference. And she says it's almost the name of the killer. And that was the name I had from other stuff. Anyway, so she was amplifying the DNA and being able to reach not to the DNA's information, but to consciousness tied to that DNA. These people believe, and those aliens that fell to Earth, if that story were true, those 200, why did they want to marry the descendants of Adam, the humans and all that? Because they were all male. There was no females. They were a freaking, war party of some sort. They knew if they preserved their DNA commingled with the other DNA and it survived, we would be where we are now technology-wise. And someday they could be resurrected like Jurassic Park and brought back to life because their consciousness is still in that lockbox tied to a very precise frequency, DNA frequency for communication. Is your soul here, or is it in an adjacent area that's very physical? We know that the torsion area, subatomic physics, is smaller than an electron. Doesn't mean it's not real. It's just too small for our big clumsy machines to be able to grab and look at and everything else. Still very real. It's not voodoo. And if the consciousness is tied to that, that's the medium where your consciousness is recording. Think of, I had a friend, he's moving. His kids have been fighting. He hears them in the garage. He thinks they're fighting again. He stops by the door of the garage to hear what's going on. And the brother says, no, I'm telling you, those are the biggest CDs I have ever seen in my life. I didn't even know they had machines to play those big CDs. And his sister's like, no way. They're records, 78s. It's not a CD, wrong term. But that was how the difference in technology storage. Now we do it on a little teeny thing. We do trillions of times more than you ever did on that little recorder. These people believe Howard Hughes was in a crowd where he knew what the conversation was. And he knew these were evil people. He was trying to do his own intelligence operation. They believe that they stored their consciousness, some prior race, in huge banks of computers under the surface of the moon. They do their rituals because during those ritual moments, during eclipses, you get a strong torsion signal. So they're on some kind of a low, they're in limp mode most of the time. But when you hit a torsion moment, if you're focused on that, the third strand DNA is what they believe they have, is activated in a very precise, resonant way. It resonates and rings like a bell during those types of events, and they can gain consciousness. And also for productive reasons, different areas of the DNA are resonating during that time that activate other things that you wouldn't normally activate in any powerful way. That's the cult that we're dealing with. Now, I don't care if it's real or not. This is what they believe, and they're getting more and more coherent in the way they talk between each other, because we're coming out of this Babel moment. Computers have overturned what happened at the Tower of Babel, and now everybody can communicate. And God said there would be nothing which they couldn't do if they could communicate. So he made it so they couldn't communicate anymore. We're coming out of that moment. They're becoming coherent, and they're now the threat with their AIs. They believe they have other technology. Their goal is to kill every last descendant of Adam who isn't hybridized. And of the ones that are there, they want to so cook their minds that they own and control the thoughts, the understanding. And that's part of the whole thing. Now, whether the pedophile or monster or whatever fully understands even a teeny part of this, doesn't really matter. In the broader culture, this is part of what's being pushed through to make this all happen. Do you see where I'm going with this?